What's up guys? River and Allison here with the daily vlogging channel River and Al. As most of our subscribers know, but if you're new, just so you know, we just came back from Paris, France with an awesome week-long vacation, and we wanted to put together a video that just put together some high-level tips from our observation that are maybe kind of unconventional.
These tips are nothing super formal, just things that we gathered from when we were traveling around Paris and things that we would like you guys to know.
So the first one seems sort of easy, but make sure you know at least a few phrases in French before you go. When we went, it was spotty at best, and it probably would have gone a lot smoother if you'd known a few phrases.
And if you start speaking in French, they'll continue to speak to you in French, so be prepared for that. But something good to know is, especially when you go to eat, they'll always ask you how many people, and then they'll ask you if you want food or drink, if you're there for food or just for a drink. So those are two things to kind of know when you enter a restaurant.
And also just the simple bonjour and merci, which means hello and thank you, will help you and go a long way.
Something else to know is that cabs are pretty expensive in Paris. They do have Uber, and they have different places where you can hail a taxi, but they're kind of expensive when compared to the States and Chicago specifically.
Yes, there are like hailing stations for taxis if you do need one. So just be mindful of that. A lot of times it's not just a taxi cruising around the street looking for fares. But also, the metro is a good alternative to the taxis and kind of cabs that are out there. So the metro is their underground or their subway, and it's relatively inexpensive, especially if you're gonna be there for a week and you know you're gonna be going around the city. You might wanna look into those passes. In the description below, we'll put a link to the fares, and you could figure out one that works best for us. We bought like a 5-day pass when we were there and used it almost every single day. Definitely worth it. Would have saved us a ton of money had we gone down the cab route.
Something else to know about cabs is when you get off at the airport, there'll be a line for taxis, but there's also a lot of people that will ask you if you want a taxi in the airport, like around baggage, and then also in line they'll be asking you if you want a taxi. And I was watching, and those people actually take you to just random cars that are parked. So it's a little bit sketch. They're not cabs. Right. It's almost like they're an Uber-like system, but not even through Uber. They're just random people that are like taking you to wherever you want to go. So, and they'll be pretty persistent about it. They'll like ask you a bunch of times, and I would just stick to the cab line if you are going to take a cab from the airport into the city instead of using their metro lines.
I mean, especially if you've not been to an area like that before and you're unfamiliar, ensuring your safety and that vetted cab drivers, professionals are picking you up and taking you around, getting in someone else's car just like you wouldn't get in a stranger's car, not knowing where you're going, how you're gonna get there. Just pretty good idea for staying safe. We stayed in the 3rd district for kind of the second to 2/3 of our trip, and we experienced it in a little bit different way. So we definitely went out to eat. There are wonderful restaurants and cafes in Paris, but also possibly explore going to markets, getting some groceries and cooking in your own home. It was really fun for us to do that. We didn't necessarily cook, we more or less just curated a bunch of things from the market, but baguettes and fruit and, you know, cheeses, obviously Parisian cheeses, all of the cheeses. You can have a good meal like that, and it is a very, very cheap alternative. We found the prices of meals to be comparable to Chicago. In some ways.
Well, they have kind of these specials where it's almost like restaurant week in Chicago, where you pay a certain price and you get an appetizer, your main entree, and dessert. And those were pretty cheap if you did that route. I mean, some of them ranged from like 13 to 20 euro, which is like really cheap. But if you bought separately, meals were pretty expensive. If a place didn't have that option and you wanted like a 3-course meal, it was pretty pricey. Like entrees were probably like around 20 euro usually. Like burgers, some places were super expensive.
Yeah. And it obviously depends on where you're eating. Are you in like a touristy area where they're gonna, you know, raise some prices that you wouldn't, you know, otherwise pay?
For our hotel, we actually stayed in District 5, and that's kind of the what they call left bank area. It's close to Notre Dame and Saint Chapelle, where we you guys saw on the vlog, hopefully.
If you didn't see those, check out the annotation in the corner.
But it's definitely it's a neat area, and there's a lot of shops and like, I mean, everywhere there's a lot of shops and cafes and stuff. But it's definitely a neat area to explore. And then for the Airbnb, we stayed just a little bit outside the 3rd district. The 2nd and 3rd districts, or they call them endorsements or something, is a little bit more, it's not like super posh, but it's like a little bit of a more upscale area. So I read, and so some of the parts we saw, not all of the areas, but I really liked where our Airbnb was, just because there was more markets on that side.
And a ton of like restaurants and cafes.
Yeah,
there
was a lot more like markets over on that side, I feel like, than the left bank area, which was mostly like shops and restaurants.
Like Allison said, we stayed in an Airbnb in the 3rd, and while we stayed in a hotel in the 6th. And the big reason for that, it was actually Allison's birthday, so we wanted to stay in a hotel and be fancy. We wanted to have like the more local feel and stay in the housing. Airbnb is awesome for that. We've stayed in Airbnbs around the world, and it's something that we're going to continue to do because it's just really awesome alternative. If some of you are weirded out by Airbnb, I know some people feel awkward about that. Maybe give it a shot. All of the vendors, we're not endorsed by Airbnb. It's just something that we would give you as a pro tip to save some money. They have to be vetted to be on the platform. So it's not just some random dude who's like Craigslisting his apartment or his couch or something. So check them out.
And if you're nervous, always ask people like friends, coworkers, if they've gone to the area that you're going to and if they've stayed in an Airbnb, because we got our Airbnb from a recommendation from some friends and it was awesome. So if you're even more nervous about trying an Airbnb for the first time, ask around.
The next tip is not just for Paris, but anywhere in the world, and that is be mindful of your surroundings. You know, before we went, we had lots of friends and family saying, you know, the world is a little unnerving right now. Why would you want to travel? There has been issues in Paris in the past. Why would you want to go there? And it's more or less just Allison and I's mentality is that we don't choose to live our lives in fear, and we're gonna live our lives the way we're going to, but also we're gonna be smart and we're gonna be aware of our surroundings. We're gonna stay away from large crowds or suspicious areas. Be mindful for people that maybe look suspicious or acting erratically, things like that. Just be smart. The tip that Allison was talking about with the cabs, that's another way you can stay aware and just don't put yourself in a dangerous situation.
I was a tiny bit, whenever we travel, I get really anxious. As I've gotten older, I've gotten more anxiety about traveling, whether that's cars or planes or what have you. But I was a little bit nervous just because of activities and alerts and things, but like, you get there and it's a normal city. It felt just like Chicago. I mean, but there were some like armed soldiers around, but just at like really important areas where it's probably a good idea to have them.
Right.
So it like, I don't know, it felt normal. I was like, I'm not walking into a war zone.
Right,
like there's no reason to be like super anxious or nervous or jittery all the time, because they've upped their security a lot, and I mean, things happen, but Paris is perfectly safe and fine to go to. Most of Europe is very safe to go to right now, so it's not like you're going somewhere crazy.
And we actually recently put together a video, at least for American citizens, and I'm sure that other foreign governments have a similar situation, but there's actually programs put together where you can set up an alert system, so if the consulate has to notify its citizens within the country that you are of a situation and what to do, or if you need to make your way to an embassy for whatever reason, if there is a dangerous situation, you can set up those programs. So check out that video if you're curious. It was super informative. So in other places that we have traveled in the world, we have to think about, do I bring cash or do I bring cards? For instance, when we were in Thailand, that is a very cash heavy country. When you're in Greece, also in most places, very cash heavy country. Paris is not. Paris is very, very friendly. If you have international credit cards, I would advise that so you don't get, foreign transaction fees. But definitely look into that. Look up what you need to know for the countries that you're going. For Paris, this video, I would say it's a good idea to bring some cash for sure.
Cabs, a lot of the taxis, well, some of the taxis don't take cards, so make sure you have cash for those just in case.
So when you're leaving the airport, make sure you have cash. That happened to us.
Yeah.
In euro for the taxi drivers. Also, tips are almost exclusively done in cash, whether you're paying with a card or not. So be sure to look at your receipts when you're at cafes and restaurants. Sometimes they add on tip and it's hard to understand whether it was on there or not. So just being courteous for your tipping and things like that.
And ladies, bring a coin purse. If you don't have a coin purse, get a coin purse, because all of your change, if you do use cash, will be, they have 2 euro coins, and even if you get, like, your cash is supposed to, like, your change is supposed to be 5 euro, they'll still give it to you in coins, and like two euro coins and then 1 euro coin. I ended up with so many.
You had like a handful.
I did. It was so many coins, and it was just like kind of obnoxious because they were just sitting all in the bottom of my purse. So get a coin purse specifically for that change. So eating times, if you're gonna go out to dinner, know that most like restaurants will start dinner around 7, but cafes serve all day long. I know in the past they would kind of have like a window where everything would be shut down in like the early afternoon, but now cafes serve all day long, but more formal restaurant dinners usually don't start until like 7.
Yeah, and I think it really depends on where you're going in the city. At least the more like touristy areas, the areas where a lot of people are gonna go, like Allison said, those cafes are gonna stay open just because so many tourists were getting caught in that window between like 11 and 3 where maybe they weren't serving food. But like she said, they're serving mostly now, and especially if you're waiting for dinner, like I said, you might need to wait later than what you may be used to because some restaurants don't even open until that time. So just be mindful. Next tip we had is expanding on the Metro card thing. So we talked about cabs versus Metro cards, but they also sell Metro cards that range in zone 1 to 3 and zone 1 to 5. Now, for any kind of touristy real things, with the exception of a couple places, you're gonna want zone to 1 to 3. And 1 to 3 is gonna give you everywhere you wanna go across all of the numbered lines. Now, there are some lettered lines that you cannot take out because those ones reach out into zones 4 and 5. Now, the 4 and 5 zones are relevant because that's where both of the airports are on the north and south side of the city, and then to the west in zone 4 is Versailles. So if you did choose to go out there, you would need to buy different tickets if you had just a zone 1 to 3 pass. We bought 1 to 3 passes. They are significantly cheaper than zone 1 to 5. Just be mindful of that. But if you're gonna go out to Versailles, if you plan to take the train to the airports and whatnot, so just know that.
And also know zones 1 to 3 is everything in the city, and zones 4 and 5 are like what they consider the suburbs of Paris. So really, except for the airports in Versailles, there's probably nothing that you would really want to see out in the suburb area. So if you're planning to just stick in Paris and do all of like the major tourist hotspots, then zone 1 through 3 would probably be fine.
Stick to 1 to 3. So we were in Paris for 6 days? 6 days. And we saw so much. If you watched any of our travel vlogs, you will see that we saw a ton of things, did a bunch of awesome stuff, but we didn't even come close to seeing everything that there was to see. There were things that we missed out on. There were things that we just didn't have time for. So my next tip is definitely plan out what you want to see. There were days where we just aimlessly wandered throughout the city, and that was spectacular. I think each day we sort of did that to some varying degree, or at least the areas that we wanted to go to. But that's the thing, is we knew the areas that we wanted to go to and then felt free to wander around. But make sure you do your research, watch our vlogs and take some of those notes down, watch other people's videos, look up some stuff online of where you'd want to go and be interested. They have tons and tons of museums. The Louvre is the second largest museum in the world. So there's a lot to see in those locations, but just know that what you're gonna see and where you wanna go.
And the next tip is actually involving Metro plus some of those attractions is the Paris Pass. So probably what would be a good idea is if you make a list of all the things that you know you wanna see, maybe not necessarily which days or like fully planned out, but make a list of everything that you wanna see and where those areas are, and then see on the Paris Pass if you can get to all of those attractions with the pass. So the pass for like all the attractions and like Metro is about, I think like around €200 per person.
It's very expensive.
It's expensive, but if you are going to a bunch of museums, if you're going to a bunch of the attractions and you know that you're gonna be using the Metro a lot, it might be worth investing, but it would be a good idea to kind of like price and cost that out. I think we came to maybe a little less, maybe about even with the Paris Pass. And we didn't really invest in that because we weren't totally sure if we would go to enough attractions that would warrant it. Like at the time we were like, oh, like we were trying to do kind of on the fly, like, does the Paris Pass cover this place and this place and this place?
It's a great suggestion, listing out and then comparing it to the list. We'll have a link to the Paris Pass in the description below. If you compare those lists and what we want to do versus what is covered, maybe we should expand on what it is. It's essentially a hard pass card that can get you into a lot of the attractions. A lot of the monuments or attractions cost money for a ticket to get in. So if you add up those tickets, it may be more than what the pass would cost you. And like Allison was saying, it also can have like Metro endorsement on it, which gets you into the underground. So when you factor in all those extra expenses, that's where it might be worth it just to buy the pass. Or, you know, if you've saved up for a trip and, you know, you want to be sure, get the pass and it can get you into pretty much anywhere anyway. But if you are traveling on a budget, this might be something you might want to crunch the numbers on.
Yeah. So something with the Metro tickets, if you do buy them, they're like tiny little tiny rectangles. They will put them in like a little sleeve for you.
There's a piece of paper about as big as your thumb.
It really is. It's kind of ridiculous, but especially for like a huge city.
I think they bank on that.
Yeah, but they're these tiny little strips and you can't have them in the same like pocket or area as your phone or any credit cards. So you have to keep them separate because
it's just a magnetized strip.
Yeah, it's a magnetized strip. I don't even know, because one time we were trying to get into one of the Metro stations and ours didn't work. I don't know what they came into contact with, but they obviously came into contact with something. And they didn't work. Luckily, the woman at the counter was super, super nice and just like redid
no questions
our cards.
asked, just
yeah,
redid
we didn't
them.
have to pay anything, which is awesome because ours were at the 5-day and were a little bit more expensive. But yeah, just know that you have to keep them separate from any cards, probably any if you have a hotel card or like any cell phones.
And if you have the Paris Pass, that's like a hard plastic, you know, pass that obviously you can put in your wallet or your purse and it's not gonna make a difference. This is just the like Metro passes that you buy that are like paper with a magnetized strip on it.
Yep.
All right guys, we've been rambling at you for a way long time. If you have any questions about Paris or traveling there, leave them in the description below. There are tons more things that we could talk forever about. We'll probably do a live stream soon and talk about the Paris trip once we get all the vlogs up. But be sure to subscribe to our channel, guys. We have a lot of travel coming up in the future. We're gonna be going to a ton of different places. Not to mention we did a daily vlog. One video, at least, every single day.
So thanks a lot for tuning in and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.